back to our channel on this beautiful day, where the drama in Genoa City never sleeps. We are diving straight into the psychological warfare, currently gripping some of our most beloved characters, as the shadows of the past stretch out to suffocate the present. Crimson Lights, usually a sanctuary of warmth and community, transforms into an arena of suffocating tension the moment Matt Clark steps across the threshold. The familiar scent of roasted coffee and baked goods is entirely eclipsed by the chilling aura of a man whose very presence in Genoa City is a harbinger of chaos. Matt does not arrive with the aggressive swagger of his past, but rather with the calculated, quiet demeanor of a man claiming to seek redemption. He approaches Sharon Rosales, a woman whose life he has historically fractured, with an audacious request for a private audience. His objective is singular and staggering in its audacity. He wants her complete forgiveness. The sheer nerve required for Matt to stand before the woman he has terrorized and ask for absolution sets the stage for a psychological confrontation that transcends a simple apology, plunging Sharon into an agonizing emotional labyrinth where every memory is a hidden landmine. Matt meticulously constructs his narrative of rehabilitation, presenting himself not as the monster of her memories, but as a flawed man who has seen the error of his ways. He attempts to convince Sharon that his remorse is profound, genuine, and worthy of a second chance. To fortify this illusion of profound personal transformation, Matt strategically wields his recent life choices as a protective shield. He subtly leans on his newly acquired employment and his blossoming, highly publicized romantic entanglement with Phyllis Summers as tangible proof of his stability and evolution. He wants Sharon to look at him and see a man who is actively rebuilding his life, someone who has shed the toxic skin of his past and is desperately trying to make amends with those he has wronged. However, this carefully curated presentation of vulnerability is precisely what makes his presence so incredibly dangerous, as it preys directly upon Sharon's innate capacity for empathy. Sharon is immediately thrust into an agonizing predicament, caught between her natural inclination toward compassion and the screaming alarm bells of her own survival instincts. She is a woman who has built a life on the principles of healing and understanding, often extending grace to those who have stumbled in the dark. Listening to Matt's pleas for forgiveness is something her empathetic nature compels her to do, but she is acutely aware of the perilous distinction between hearing an apology and actually granting absolution. To listen is merely to process words. To forgive is to extend a bridge of trust, and trusting Matt Clark is a gamble that has historically ended in devastation. She sits across from him, maintaining a steely exterior while a tempest of conflicting emotions rages within, forced to navigate the treacherous waters of a conversation she never wanted to have, with a man she desperately wished had stayed away from her home forever. The history between Sharon and Matt is not merely a collection of unfortunate events. It is a dark, sprawling tapestry of manipulation, cruelty, and profound psychological trauma. Matt's past actions have left indelible scars not only on Sharon's psyche but on the very fabric of her family. She cannot simply look at him and see a man seeking a fresh start. She sees the architect of some of her darkest hours. Every word of contrition that falls from his lips is weighed against the agonizing memories of his past transgressions. The wounds he inflicted are not the kind that fade with a simple apology or a few months of good behavior. They are deep systemic traumas that have shaped the defensive walls Sharon has had to build around herself and her loved ones. The audacity of his request forces Sharon to confront the ghosts of her past, dragging her back to moments of intense vulnerability and fear that she has spent years trying to overcome through therapy and sheer willpower. Just as the suffocating pressure of Matt's calculated vulnerability reaches its peak, the atmosphere is shattered by a devastating influx of new information regarding Nick Newman. Sharon receives a critical update about Nick's rapidly deteriorating condition, pulling her focus away from Matt's performance and plunging her into a state of acute maternal and familial panic. The news paints a grim picture of Nick's current reality inside the rehabilitation facility, highlighting his agonizing struggle with severe drug addiction, his terrifying relapse, and his dangerous, codependent association with Marie Kirkland. The update is a stark, brutal reminder of the fragility of Nick's sobriety and the perilous edge upon which his life currently balances. This sudden injection of real-time tragedy completely alters the molecular structure of the meeting at Crimson Lights, transforming it from a tense negotiation of the past into a highly volatile confrontation about the present. The timing of this devastating news regarding Nick is not merely an unfortunate coincidence. It serves as a glaring, inescapable spotlight on Matt Clark's ongoing toxicity. Sharon is acutely aware that Nick's descent into the hellscape of chemical dependency did not happen in a vacuum. It was the direct result of a catastrophic chain reaction orchestrated by the very man sitting across from her. Matt's sinister presence in Genoa City, his manipulative machinations, and the chaos he intentionally sowed were the primary catalysts that pushed Nick over the edge, driving him toward the numbing escape of illicit substances. As Sharon processes the grim details of Nick's struggles, the line connecting Matt's past actions to Nick's present agony becomes blindingly clear. The man asking for her forgiveness is the exact same man whose fingerprints are all over the destruction of the father of her children, making the concept of absolution not just difficult, but seemingly impossible. The delicate balance of Sharon's internal conflict is instantly incinerated by a surge of fierce, protective rage. The empathy that Matt was so desperately trying to exploit evaporates, replaced by the unyielding resolve of a matriarch defending her family. Sharon's perspective shifts dramatically. She no longer sees a flawed man seeking redemption, but a parasitic threat attempting to burrow deeper into her life. The realization that Matt is directly responsible for Nick's current suffering, and by extension, the immense pain inflicted upon their entire family, hardens Sharon's heart into impenetrable stone. She looks at Matt's carefully composed expression of remorse, and sees only the devastating collateral damage he leaves in his wake. The meeting, which Matt intended to be a stepping stone toward his social rehabilitation, rapidly devolves into a silent, intense standoff, with Sharon radiating a protective fury that completely neutralizes his manipulative charm. This critical juncture forces a terrifying question to the forefront of Sharon's mind regarding Matt Clark's true objective. The sincerity of his remorse is deeply suspect, overshadowed by the glaring possibility that this entire performance is a calculated maneuver. Sharon is forced to consider whether Matt is genuinely trying to atone for his sins, or if he is simply utilizing a sociopathic strategy to exploit her well-known compassion. By securing her forgiveness, Matt could effectively neutralize one of his most vocal critics and gain a terrifyingly close vantage point to the Newman family fortress. It is a classic predator's tactic, feigning weakness to disarm the prey. Sharon realizes that granting him even a sliver of grace could be interpreted as an invitation, providing him with the leverage he needs to further infiltrate their lives, manipulate their vulnerabilities, and continue his unseen campaign of destruction from within their inner circle. The narrative brilliance of this current dynamic lies in its deliberate, agonizing ambiguity. The situation is masterfully withholding the absolute truth regarding Matt's internal landscape, leaving everyone suspended in a state of perpetual suspicion. There has been no definitive confirmation that Matt's transformation is genuine, nor has there been undeniable proof that he is currently plotting a specific, malicious attack. This intentional lack of clarity forces everyone to navigate a psychological minefield. Is it possible that a man with such a dark, labyrinthine history can genuinely seek the light? Or is a leopard fundamentally incapable of changing its spots? By keeping Matt's true intentions shrouded in mystery, the tension elevates exponentially, ensuring that every word he speaks, every gesture he makes, and every apology he offers is subjected to intense forensic scrutiny by a deeply traumatized woman who cannot afford to make a mistake. It is absolutely crucial to understand the fundamental nature of this interaction. This is in no way the rekindling of a tragic romance or the beginning of a twisted love story. The conversation between Sharon and Matt is a brutal, uncompromising psychological test of endurance. It is an exploration of the absolute limits of forgiveness, the fragility of trust, and the enduring power of past wounds. Sharon is not a damsel in distress being wooed by a reformed bad boy. She is a resilient survivor, engaging in a high-stakes chess match with a master manipulator. The tension crackles not with romantic chemistry, but with the dangerous friction of two opposing forces colliding. Matt is testing the perimeter of her defenses, probing for a weakness he can exploit, while Sharon is standing firm, refusing to let her innate kindness be weaponized against the very people she has sworn to protect at all costs. The conversation forces Sharon to confront the heavy, suffocating burden of holding on to the past versus the terrifying vulnerability of letting it go. To forgive Matt would require her to dismantle years of carefully constructed emotional armor. exposing herself to the possibility of a betrayal that could be far more devastating than anything she has previously endured. The wounds he inflicted are woven into the very fabric of her identity, shaping her worldview and her fierce protectiveness over her children. To absolve him feels like a betrayal of her own trauma, a dismissal of the agonizing journey she undertook to heal from his cruelty. Yet, holding on to the anger is a poison of its own, a heavy anchor that keeps her tethered to the darkest chapters of her life. Matt's request forces her to navigate this impossible dichotomy, demanding that she weigh her own psychological peace against the safety and security of the entire Newman family. As the silence stretches between them, the atmosphere in the coffee house becomes thick and unbreathable. Matt waits patiently, his eyes locked onto Sharon, projecting an aura of desperate hope that is meticulously designed to break her resolve. But Sharon's mind is entirely consumed by the harrowing images of Nick trembling in a rehab facility, fighting for his life against a demon Matt helped unleash. The juxtaposition of Matt's calm, pleading demeanor against the chaotic destruction he has caused creates a cognitive dissonance that fuels Sharon's rising indignation. She recognizes the profound injustice of the moment. The architect of their misery is sitting comfortably, asking for a clean slate, while his victims are left to crawl through the wreckage he left behind. The tension escalates with every passing second, transforming the quaint surroundings of Crimson Lights into a pressure cooker of unspoken accusations and simmering righteous vengeance. The internal battle concludes with a resounding, unyielding victory for Sharon's survival instincts. The empathy that briefly flickered is permanently extinguished by the cold, hard reality of Nick's suffering. She looks at Matt not as a man seeking redemption, but as an active, ongoing threat to her family's existence. She realizes that to grant him forgiveness would be an act of supreme negligence, a failure to protect those who rely on her strength. Her demeanor hardens, her posture straightens, and the vulnerability vanishes from her eyes, replaced by the fierce, uncompromising glare of a woman who has survived the fire and refuses to be burned again. She understands that Matt's presence in Genoa City is a toxic variable that must be managed with extreme prejudice, and that any concession, any hint of absolution, would only serve to embolden a man who has proven time and again that he is utterly incapable of genuine, selfless remorse. As Sharon prepares to deliver her final devastating rejection, the entire dynamic of the interaction undergoes a chilling microscopic shift. Matt, sensing the impenetrable wall of her resolve, and realizing that his carefully constructed narrative of victimhood and rehabilitation has completely failed to breach her defenses, allows the mask of the reformed penitent to slip for a fraction of a second. The warmth vanishes from his eyes, replaced by a cold, calculating emptiness that hints at the terrifying monster lurking just beneath the surface. He leans in closer, the air around them dropping in temperature, and his tone shifts from pleading to something dangerously ambiguous. The realization strikes Sharon with paralyzing force. Matt's request for forgiveness was never a plea for peace, but a calculated test of her loyalty and vulnerability. And as he subtly reaches into his coat pocket, producing a small, unidentifiable object that catches the dim light of the cafe, Sharon understands with horrifying clarity that her refusal has just triggered the next, far more lethal phase of his dark agenda.